is basically when someone like uses the the typical Kalam cosmological argument. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause. Then obviously you have an on-cause cause because it has to be infinite. I don't like, how, for example, you are dependent on your parents, right, to come into existence. But after you come into existence, like now at 18 years old, for example, I'm not like dependent on my parents to exist. So how do I kind of like respond to someone that says, well, you believe Allah is maintaining the universe, but what like, how can you prove that Allah?
Yeah, and I think I've understood the question. Does it? And Al-Ghazali mentions this in his Kitab Al-Iqtisad fi al-I'tiqad, actually, where he mentions this argument. كل شيء له بداية له سبب العالم وله بداية إذن العالم وله سبب. That everything that begins to exist has a cause. The world has began to exist, therefore the world has a cause. He differentiates between cause and dependency, and this is an important differentiation. Ibn Tufayl, one of the thinkers, Islamic thinkers, he says that when you're arguing for God's existence, you should do so on a double track kind of argumentation, not just using causation, not just using dependency. So for instance, with causation, I can cause a house to be in existence. I build a house, yeah, and then I die. Okay, the house continues to be in existence and it's not depending on me. So you've conflated between dependence and causation. Dependence is not that, okay, that the thing led to the other thing. That's the case of you and your parents. Your parents led to you. That's causation. Okay. Dependence is different. Now, dependence means if this thing does not exist, then you will not exist. And I'll give you an example of that. So, for instance, let's say, for instance, a tree. And I think I've used this example in many places. A tree depends on sun in order to continue existing because it requires photosynthesis. So, as soon as the sun goes, it's only a matter of time until the tree will die as well. You get it? Yeah. So here's an easier example. The sun and its rays. The rays of the sun depend on the sun. No sun, no rays. The continued existence of the sun explains the continued existence of the rays. So if you have no sun, you will have no rays. Acceptable?
Yeah.
So we have to differentiate between causation and dependency. When we're talking about an infinite series of dependent things, it's different from talking about an infinite series of caused things. Wherein in the latter, the infinite series of caused things, the thing doesn't have to be there in order for continuation to be there. Like your parents could conceive you and then they die and you continue. And may Allah give your parents long life, and so on, and your grandparents, whatever it may be. But you see the point?
Yep.
So when we're arguing from contingency, the argument is not saying that it's like a man building a house and then dying and the house continues. The argument is saying it's like the sun and its rays. If you get rid of the sun, the rays will not exist and cannot exist. So and if you deny that, then you will have nothing, because the point is you can't have a set of only dependent things, because if you have things depending upon other things, ad infinitum, there'd be no reason for anything to be in existence and nothing would stand. So for instance, take this as an example. Take the example of I give this example. I don't know if it's a good one. You tell me if it makes sense to you. Take the example of the sea. Yeah, if you go now to Brighton or one of those places where there's a sea, yeah, and you look into this, we're going to see a sea like waves and a sea and all that kind of thing, yeah. Now, have you ever seen the sea floor?
I've not seen it, but I know it exists.
Yeah, you know it exists because without it, the foundation, the sea floor is like the foundation. Okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So without that foundation, the water would not be able to stand. Likewise, without an existential foundation to the universe, nothing would stand in existence. Everything would fall. Everything would fall. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it actually does.
So when we're saying dependence, it's not the same as saying causation.
Yeah, so I understand that I conflated the two.
And when you make the argument on, as Ibn Tufayl mentions, on two tracks, okay, this actually gives the atheist nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Because if you're going to say, if they're going to say, oh, something's like you can create and then leave, like the man who builds the house and dies, yeah? But we're saying, no, it's not like that. The similitude is not just like that. It's like that, but also like the sun and its rays. So dependency is much more powerful than that. And you could just argue on dependency. You don't even need causation. You don't even require causation to make argument.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much.